And welcome back for another episode of the Dragon Heads. I'm your master of ceremonies, Thorn Rain. With me, as always, my two hosts. We have Dragon Joe and Dungeon Kyle with me. How are you guys doing this evening?
Doing
I'm
great.
I'm doing great, man. Glad to be back.
Fantastic. I know, man. Like Sunday nights and now Monday nights are like the hype nights because we play D&D on Sundays together, and then we sit down and we talk D&D on Monday nights. So it's the best time of the week for me.
I honestly
Absolutely.
can't really wait till those 2 days. I love D&D, so
I know, and the more I'm getting into it, the more excited I am. Like, I didn't know anything about what we're going to be talking about tonight in our main discussion, all of these optional rules. So I'm pretty excited to learn about some new stuff that I personally have never experienced in any of my games. So let's roll this right down. We're going to jump into the news. We got two bits of news here tonight. I'm going to start us off because this is one that I've noticed through my time doing social media around like esports and my previous podcast. D&D Beyond had pulled an artist contest that they had put up. It was going to be. I got the image up in the news here. Um, what was that? A frame design art contest, and they got a little bit of pushback from the community. Um, I've seen this happen quite a few times. Me personally, I kind of agree with a lot of the artists. They pulled it because only one winner was really going to fully benefit from it, like monetarily. Um, and a lot of artists out on Twitter and that kind of make their living doing overlays and player profiles and player like original character pieces. That's kind of how they make their money. And to give a piece of art away for free kind of didn't sit well with a lot of people, and they voiced their opinions, and D&D Beyond listened, and they pulled the contest. And I believe they're going to be looking at other ways in the future to kind of highlight some of their fan artists out there.
So my question to you is, what is the best way to run a contest if you're a company like D&D Beyond? Like, do you say we're only going to use the winner's art, or like, is it one of those things that you want to pay for everything that you use, and anything that you're not going to use, uh, you kind of like, thanks for submitting, but it's not what we're looking for. Like, what's the bet? Like, I guess, as someone that's not in that realm at all, what's the best way for D&D Beyond to approach something like this in the future?
I'm not I'm only going off of what I've seen from artist friends and then like people that they tweet and retweet um in the artist community on Twitter, surrounded or like kind of in the gaming atmosphere. Um a lot of them say, Twitter clout doesn't, put food on the table, which I completely understand. Me personally, like I think that if they're going to do a contest with one winner that received monetary, prizes, um maybe instead of just having the artwork tweeted out, like make a gallery with links to these people's Patreons, coffees, Deviant Arts, or whatever sites that they use to sell their prints. Because I know a lot of these people will do not custom pieces for individuals, like commission pieces. They'll do like landscapes, they'll do characters, they'll do like armor sets, and then they'll sell the prints. Like put up links to these people's, livelihoods. That would probably be the best way that I could think of. I don't know, maybe I'll reach out to some of my artist friends and see what they would think would be the best way to run the contest. Kyle, I know you kind of have a little bit of like a background in this. Um, any thoughts
Y-
on what they might be able to do to make this a little bit better for everyone as a whole?
well, honestly, like my background isn't in art, but my parents own a graphic design shop, so we have a back in the legalities of owning art and the rights to sell it and everything.
Hmm.
So unfortunately, what the corporations are doing is the best way to do it safely and legally is by them forfeiting their rights if they submit to a contest. That's the best way for them, the corporate people, to do it legally, because there's always those people trying to manipulate the system and that.
Hmm.
What would I do if I owned a business doing that? Would be what you said earlier, which is 100% throw a shout out to their page on Pinterest or their Etsy or where their DeviantArt and get them the viewership and the internet travel on their pages to try to help sell more of their products. But that's all morally, you know. So you got to get corporate to think morally rather than profitable.
And that's difficult to do.
Some might say even impossible.
So, Joe, you got this next bit here.
Um,
You were kind of excited about this one.
well, this next bit is more of an update of two of the things that we talked about earlier in earlier shows. Uh, the first one is from the Dungeon Dudes, the Dungeons of Drakheim. Their Kickstarter fully funded. They hit all their stretch goals. Um, they ended up making 1.2 million.
Damn.
When they were looking for $20,000. Like I like it blows my mind that they're like, hey, we just want to publish this book and we want $20,000. Well, here's 1.2 million, and I'm just like, and they're one of the bigger like players in the YouTube like the YouTube D&D community. It's like them, Nerdarchy, Nerd Immersion, and then you have like the I call them the drawing people. It's like Puffin Forest, Joe Cat, those sort of people. So they have a lot of followers and a lot of people that have watched their streams, watched their channel. So that's totally amazing for them for what they wanted, and they exceeded all expectations that they possibly wanted. Now, the other guy that we mentioned the on the podcast before was the Dungeon Coach, who's a smaller channel, but again, he was looking for a pledge goal of $10,000 and ended up with 250,000, and he's sitting there going, "Holy cow! I got everything. I hit all my stretch goals. I did everything." He's like, I don't know what to do with myself." Like a lot of this is feeling like when Critical Role did their Kickstarter, and they're sitting there going, "What?" They just like file does not work. They're just duh. But it's one of those things. It's great to see people contributing to these things that they're passionate about, and that these small guys that are, I don't want to say in their basement necessarily, but they're in their basement, they're in their garage, recording these videos, and it's like they're being successful with it. It's amazing to see, and it's a great thing for the community.
Yeah, all these like homebrew, non-official like content that are based within the D&D like rule sets are like taken off. Like we've talked about Ouroboros, like they hit their like multiple stretch goals. Like everyone is just kind of jumping at the opportunity to play with and in these settings that aren't official Wizard of the Coast, but there's a lot of very talented and imaginative people out there that are making these books, and clearly people want to play them. I know I'm super excited for the War Chief Gaming Ouroboros Coils of the Serpent. That's like my go-to. I can't wait to play that. Yes, let me play with no armor and all of my stats come from tattoos. I love tattoos. That just blows my mind that people can come up with these ideas, put it into a book, throw it up on Kickstarter, get it funded, and then provide hours of entertainment for guys like us to mess around with in these fantastic worlds.
Not only that, but
Absolutely.
it's also creating a whole business for
Hmm.
those people that were wanting to just simply publish a book because they had a fan base that was like, hey, this would be a cool idea. Instead, now it's, hey, this is a cool idea. Here's a whole new business. Hope
Yeah,
you wanted that. And like, but it's like great because there's so many people and the fan base is so willing to give and show the support. It's comforting.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, not a whole lot of news. Wanted to give those recaps. We're gonna skip our top three because we're gonna go into our main discussion, and then we might float back into our top three from the way I'm understanding this. Joe, this is your baby here, man. We're gonna be talking about chapter 9 of the Dungeon Master's Guide, optional rules. What you got for us?
Well, initially, what this whole thing started out as was it was a rabbit hole that I went down, and I saw a video on YouTube. I believe the guy the channel was called Dungeon Craft. The channel I'm not that familiar with, but I checked it out, and he said it was something. It was some clickbaity title of rules that are in the DMG that you're not using. So I watched the video and I was like, okay, yeah, I hadn't heard some of these rules. Then I'm like, but he referenced one of the things he referenced in the video was page I think it's page 244 of the Dungeon Master's Guide. I might be off on it. It's chapter 9 of the Dungeon Master's Guide. Um, I looked it up on D&D Beyond because we have all access to D&D Beyond, and so I don't have an exact page number. But as I started going through them, I'm like, holy cow! All this stuff is in there that all right, maybe it not might not work in every setting, but some of this stuff like I really intrigued me. Um, and I'm gonna go down the list, and as I explain what each one of these are, I'll kind of get your guys' reaction to it, whether you think it's good, bad, um, if it's uh, if you would want to play with this rule or not. So I'll just start at the beginning. The first one is it's called proficiency dice. So instead of normally you roll a d20, like if you make any sort of skill check, you roll a d20, then you add your proficiency bonus if you're proficient in that skill, and whatever the corresponding stat is, whether it's wisdom, dexterity, constitution, whatever. Well, this, instead of your proficiency bonus being a static number, like at level 5, your proficiency bonus is 3. Well, what it does instead of that is it replaces your proficiency bonus with a proficiency dice. And at first to fourth level, it's a D4. At fifth to eighth, it's a D6. Ninth to 12th, it's a D8, and then a D10 and a D12. And the whole idea behind this is you're rolling the dice, and it can give you more proficiency than that just static number. So it can help your roll, and that's huge, especially when it's like you're this close to making a successful check. And the the it's also the other fact of everyone loves rolling dice. You always love that fact of, oh yeah, I skill check, I get to roll dice. Oh, I get to roll 2 dice now. Yahtzee. It's that feeling of hitting the numbers you need to hit the DC and hit the check, and you're just more excited about it because you're rolling more dice. Now, what do you guys think about this? Do you think this is something that you would incorporate in your game or not?
Honestly, if you're asking me, I like the clickety clack Mac rocks. I love to roll more dice. That's just how it is. Statistically, though, it would be better to have a static number that you're adding. But I don't know. rolling another dice to have your proficiency is more engaging, if you ask me. So honestly, yes, I would like to run this. Maybe every once in a
I'll
while.
put this. I'll put it this way. You want to talk statistically, okay? So at level 1 to 4, I'll start there. You have a proficiency bonus of 2. You're rolling a d4. So half the time, you're going to get a number higher than 2 than your proficiency bonus. A fourth of the time, you're going to hit it on the nose, and 1 out of every 4 times, you're going to roll lower than your what would be your proficiency bonus. So for me, it's 75% chance that you're either going to hit your proficiency bonus or be higher than your proficiency bonus. That seems pretty good to me. You know what I mean? And as you go up in level, there's more variation there, but it's always like a little over 50% that you're going to roll at least whatever the static proficiency number is or higher. So like with a D6, you're either going to roll a 3, a 4, or 5, or 6. So I feel like it's a little better statistically as you go up in numbers. Obviously, either go up to like a D10 or a D12. Your statistics go down because you're not going to always roll. You know, if you have 6 numbers, 7 numbers out of the 12 are going to be a positive result for you versus there's going to be 6, 5 numbers that aren't. But it's still one of those things that's like half the time you're going to roll better than what you normally do, and it really intrigued me. What do
I'm
you think, Thorn?
never having DM'd. It scares me because it just adds one more layer of complexity. But it makes it more engaging. The way that I'm viewing it, it goes from being okay, I know that I always get a +2, done. I don't think about it anymore. This makes the whatever the role might be just a little bit more engaging. A fully seasoned table, I could see this being the way to go because it would just add you got to roll for something that basically determines what the fight is going to happen, and your proficient it all comes down to your proficiency dice roll, and you roll that 8 on your d8 and you finish off the encounter and everything's great, or you roll the 1 and now you have somebody knocked. Like it would, to me, it would make the encounters more engaging and fun. But for being somebody that's never DM'd, this terrifies me because I don't know if I would personally be able to keep up with all of the extra dice rolls.
Well, it's just one of the like I've had people that they try to speed up their combat by like they'll roll their d20 and whatever their damage dice would be at the same time, so that if they're like, okay, I hit, and then this is my damage, and it's just one of those things that it's they, and that's what I think would happen with proficiency dice, because you're only going to roll the proficiency dice when you're proficient in that skill. So let's say I'm a rogue and I'm proficient in stealth. Okay, well I get to roll a d20 in my proficiency dice. Um, but the but I have to make a animal handling check as a rogue, and I don't have proficiency dice. It's just my wisdom and whatever my d20 says. And there is one other thing that I forgot to mention about this variation is expertise, because what expertise does normally is it doubles your proficiency bonus. So if your proficiency bonus is normally 3, it doubles it to 6. In this format, proficiency, if you have a proficient expertise in something, you get to roll 2 proficiency dice and take the higher of the 2.
Yes,
So
please.
it to me it feels like it nerfs expertise a little bit, but again, it's something that I'm not like overly thrilled about because it's one of those things. How many times have you seen a bard or a rogue have expertise in something and they have a plus 12, plus 15, and they're only level 10? You know,
True.
it it gets really ridiculous really quick, especially when people know how to build their characters well.
Yes.
Um, this this combats that a little bit, but at the same time, they're still getting an advantage on whatever that D6, that D8, that D10 is. So I don't feel they're losing a lot, but they it stops them. It also stops them from rolling like a 30 every other roll.
It it it,
So that's
it
the first.
makes it more realistic. Instead of just straight up
Absolutely.
doubling it, it's just you're good at whatever you're doing, so here's you get twice the chance of being good rather than
Right.
just always succeeding everything you do because you got plus 15 at level 10.
Uh-huh.
So,
The next rule though is they call it skill variance, and basically the whole idea behind this is you're always going to have that like barbarian that has no charisma whatsoever, but he wants to intimidate somebody. So rather than
Ooh.
have them, just to absolutely have a -2 to their charisma, they're able to use their strength skill instead of their charisma skill. And they have a whole list here of um, each class and what skills that they could potentially swap something in or this and that. And it's 100% honest. It's one of those things that if the situation, if there's the right situation, I could see a DM being like, yeah, the the paladin or the barbarian or the fighter is standing behind them with a with a big old axe on their shoulder or a big old sword on their bit, or they're sharpening their weapon and glaring menacingly at them, or they say something, oh, you better give us a discount or else. And it's like, are you strong arming this guy? And like, yeah, I'm strong arming this guy. Okay, use your strength rather than your charisma, because it's that weird sort of, I don't want to say bluff necessarily, but it's that weird sort of flex. And to have that is really nice, so that they're not just automatically going to fail on whatever the check is. Do you guys like? Is that something you guys use, or they're like, it's something that comes up so rarely that it's not a big deal?
honestly, I didn't really know this was a thing. And looking at it, I could see where it'd be useful, but at the same time, I can see where it can be encumbersome.
Yeah, I'm like just kind of scrolling through it, looking at it. Again, coming from I hate using the word newer because I've played for a while. It's just the large gap in time. Um, it just seems like this adds way more complexity than what I currently would be comfortable with playing. Um, I mean,
I
I
genuinely
like the
think
idea of like if my charisma's low and I'm playing a fighter and I'm jacked and I got this giant warhammer over my shoulder, I can use you know my gleaming muscles to intimidate instead of my charisma. Like that's kind of cool, but it just seems like it's a lot to take in.
I mean,
I think a
honestly,
lot of I think a lot of this is based upon the personality that the character has, because sometimes it's like if I'll take a critical role example, Grog. if Grog is threatening you because he's threatening violence, you're kind of going, yeah, we understand. Versus if you had a Scanlan threatening you, I'm going to kick your butt, and you kind of go, yeah, move out of the way, Pipsqueak. What were you saying, Kyle? I cut you off.
Honestly, I think this could easily be circumvented with how the DM handles it. Like for me personally, like if a barbarian in my campaign wanted to like intimidate somebody by slamming his warhammer right next to his foot. I understand that it would be intimidate would go off of charisma, but in that case I would be like add your strength modifier. You know, just because like
And I
it and it just by simply doing that and just kind of rolling with the RP of the game and the situation really kind of bypasses this whole block. But if people want rules as written, it is a good block of information. It does work.
and like I said, the whole idea behind this rule is very situational, and I I'm not like, it's one of those things. If there's a certain character that they're like, I want to be able to do this thing, but my stats tell me that I'm not good at it, but it would make sense for their character to be, intimidating. Okay, well, we'll rework that. And this gives us a blueprint of how to do that. The next one is called Hero Points. And I read through this one, I swear, like 3 or 4 times to make sure I understood it. And it's basically like an inspiration. It like a bard inspiration, because uh spending the hero point allows you to roll a d6 and add it to your d20, turning a possible failure into a success. And you can only use one of these per roll. And the other thing about it is whenever you have a death saving throw, you can use one of these to have an automatic success. So, I mean, that's one of those things that if you're in a very brutal campaign, I could see these being well, I'm on that third death roll, or I have 2 successes, 2 failures on those death saves. I'm just going to automatically succeed and pop up. So you're keeping your character a part of the story versus just dying flat out.
You're completely right. This is literally bardic inspiration, but to a hit roll. I can see where this would be encumbersome for newer players because it just adds another role. Even though it's kind of really helpful towards newer players, it's just another layer of complication. But in a
Right.
fully seasoned table with a brutal campaign, I can see where this would be a nice little addition to kind of have.
It's kind of what I was thinking. Like, it's kind of what I was
You're muted,
thinking.
Dorn.
Yeah, I caught it as I said the first sentence. Um, this feels like your DM is building out a campaign that his goal is to have you die. And he gives you these hero points as basically your means to stay alive. Like, I could see this being in a absolutely brutal campaign. Um I I don't know, like, just me reading through it and looking at it, I feel like if I was running a game, I wouldn't want to give this to like players at the first level. I like one, the name hero points. I don't think that you should have these at first level. Like, maybe you start getting them at the 5th level, or like closer to like 8 maybe. Only because a lot of the stuff in the first couple of levels fairly easy. I'm again, unless your campaign is gonna be absolutely like looking to murder your player characters. But I don't know. I kind of like this one more than the other two that we went over so far. Um, the thought of the I make a swing and it looks like it's barely gonna miss, and I put in that much little bit of effort because my hero points gave me a 5 and it's now a success, and I bash a zombie in the face. Um, I kind of like that aspect of it. Like when you use the hero dice in the storytelling aspect of it, it's the I knew it was going to fail, but I willed myself to swing that much harder or reach that much further uh to land that hit. So I kind of like this if you're doing a real RP based and your DM allows you to like role play out your hits and stuff like that. This could add a lot of really cool um like flavor to encounters and stuff like that.
I will say that there's enough in the modules that like D&D modules before level 5, I have seen more than like certain encounters be absolutely deadly, if not borderline TPK. And like the ones that I immediately remember, um, the Green Dragon Fright in the Lost Mines of Fendelver, because the party is per the book, the party is supposed to be there at level 3, and they're fighting a young green dragon. And I, like I've seen people try to tactfully, you know, go about different ways of fighting this dragon and be successful with it. But at the same time, I also seen uh, them being scared to step into a room. Next thing they know, this dragon's breathing a poison cloud like through the doorway and hitting half of them, and the whole party's in trouble. So I could definitely see where even at low levels, because especially like level 1, 2, people die easy, and that's the thing. You aren't heroes in those first couple levels. The you're the commoners. You're the guys trying to be adventurers. Um, just
You're the guys that got drunk enough at the pub and
Yeah.
was like, "Let's go on an adventure, guys."
exactly,
And then somebody hits you and
exactly.
go, "Oh crap, this is gonna hurt."
Um, this next part is called they titled it Honor and Sanity, and basically there are two other types of stats that you can roll. And the idea behind honor, the best example I've heard is that if you're a dwarf, for instance, and you're in good standing with your clan and all that sort of things, you have honor there. You may be a low charisma character, but because of the honor and the like clan name that you have, you're going to be able to get into dwarven society and be able to talk to the heads of the clans. You're going to be able to talk to the dwarven kings, the the nobles and important, the movers and shakers of dwarven society.
That's
But
interesting.
you'd only do that if you have a high honor score.
So
And
basically, it's your societal knowledge or your societal reputation.
yeah, I would say it goes much more along the lines of kind of your reputation in a society. And there may be some societies, like if you are a human and you're in the middle of a drow society, it's like, yeah, you're going to be a slave, so they don't care.
See, and
But
like
the other No,
reading
go ahead.
through the honor score thing, it says that it can't be increased through normal like means, like when you get an ability score increase, but it can go up or down based on character actions. Like if you roll bad at an event and you puke on the king's shoes, your honor drops. Like that seems super interesting to me that this your honor score is directly affected by you being out in public, because typically in a game, like, yeah, you might get banned from a city, or like the guards will look for you if you rob something, but like if you have high honor in a walking through a city, you might have peasants coming up and bowing to you or something. Like the honor portion
The
of
guard
this.
might be in your pocket.
I
Yeah, yeah,
I I like this. I'm gonna
this is
have to
cool.
include this. I didn't know about this. I'm actually excited. I kind of really like this. To to go on your point earlier, like if you get thrown out of a city and you're like, say you had high honor, if 10 is being your neutral, you had like, we'll say 15, 16 honor in that city, and you get thrown out like that, you can immediately drop down to 6, 5,
Mm-hmm.
4. And I like that there's that stat in there that basically says how it's your persona that you are putting onto the game world. I really like that.
Right. The second thing that they talk about in this rule set is sanity, and I don't know how much. Have either one of you ever played Call of Cthulhu?
Yes.
No, sir.
Okay. Call of Cthulhu has a similar system, and it's basically you have to make a saving throw whenever your character runs into a new horror or a new monster or ghost or something. And that's kind of the same thing with this. And I know in Out of the Abyss, there's a whole mess of things with curses and madness, and there's tables in the adventure um, dedicated to what level of madness you're at, and it can be everything from you become an alcoholic because you're dealing with that's the way your way of dealing with these crazy sanity things, or it might be something like you start talking in the third person. Like it's truly a gambit of all kinds of role play options and other stuff that is just really weird. Um, for this one though, it's you have to make sanity checks if you see something that's extremely uh, alien in terms of like say you go to the Feywild for the first time, or the Far Realm, or the Shadowfell. Stuff like that all does is really messes with you. If you make direct contract with a mind of an alien creature, so all of a sudden a succubus tries to seduce you, or a um, uh, mind flayer tries to attack you and eat your brain, it's it's something that messes with your sanity, gives you PTSD, and all of that is really interesting to me. Um, there were a couple other ones in that bit, but the other ones that I really wanted to hit on were the one was called gritty realism, and this the gritty realism it changes the game big time. Basically, the idea is with gritty realism, instead of your long rest being a good night's sleep and your short rest being an hour, it makes your short rest a good night's sleep, and your long rest has to be a week of good night's sleep. So there's it's one of those things that it changes It changes the power levels of a lot of classes. It changes abilities that get used on a short rest. It changes how much you want to use the spell slot. Period. Like if you're a wizard and you have, you know, that one third level spell, a couple second level spells, and 4 first level spells, you're gonna be super cautious when you use your spell slot, especially if you're in the middle of nowhere. But the other thing about this that helps the DM is because they constantly talk about, well, you need 5, 6 encounters per long rest. Well, you're suddenly making a long rest a week, basically. You're easily able to get 5 or 6 encounters in a week versus in a single day. It makes it much more. It slows the pace of a lot of things down, but at the same time, it gives you a certain like back and forth with a lot of the, well, do I use the medical kit to restore a little bit of health? What feats are good? It changes a lot in the game, and I really kind of like it.
I think like listening to this, pairing gritty realism with the honor system that we talked about would make for, it would be a heavier RP, a more, like you said, kind of guarded combat. Like you might not drop one of those big spells on, this group of kobolds that you come up against because you're worried that you're in this swamp and you're going to come across a hag, like whatever it might be. So I think the combination of the gritty realism with the honor system, making it to where you need to go into cities, you need to interact in the cities, those two paired together, I think could make for a very interesting campaign tied together.
I also would say that it makes the use of hit dice like so much more important.
Yeah.
It's like, do I spend this hit dice? Do I not spend this hit dice? And I think I would also have some sort of tracker to be like, okay, you've taken your 7th, like basically clip your coupon thing of, okay, hey, you got your 7th good rest, you get your spell slots back. But what do you think, Kyle?
Honestly, I like it. I like his suggestion of combining gritty realism with the honor of forcing you to go into the cities, but then when you leave the cities, you have to survive, essentially. I like it.
Yeah, and like I said, it's one of those things that um, there were a couple things about it that I was like, okay, that's really cool. And I just want to brush over a couple other of the optional rules. There are a couple things like flanking. Everyone seems to know about flanking, and I was it 3.5 or was it 4th edition that had flanking as a big thing?
3.5 and Pathfinder.
Okay, they had flanking as a very big thing in those editions, and the thing is in 5e, flanking, you can use it because being on the opposite side of a thing takes certain positioning. But the other thing that I keep seeing is that it basically is trying to double up on something that, like, a barbarian's reckless attack or something else that where it's like, well, they would have used this ability to get the advantage, but because I already have flanking, that ability is useless. It's like if you have pack tactics, for instance. Well, I don't need pack tactics. I have flanking. It demeans a lot of abilities.
Well,
Another. Go ahead.
in older editions, you actually had to be on the opposite side of the enemy. In 5th edition, I'm pretty sure you just have to have an ally within 5 feet.
Yep.
And that's what it just kind of makes it what the point you were getting of why do I need pack tactics if I got flanking? You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Older editions, I think they did it a little bit better. 5e just kind of really streamlined a lot and then packed a lot of like the older edition rules that were very specific but like necessary. They kind of just packed
Right.
3 or 4 of those rules into one rule, and that's kind of what's happening
Yeah.
here.
Um, the other two things I wanted to mention are feats and then Tasha's optional stat increases. And at this point, uh, I say feats are optional content or optional rules. I have not seen a game where the DM's like no feats. I know there's DMs out there that they don't like certain feats, whether it's the lucky feat, whether it's the um, pole arm master. They don't want the pole arm master sentinel feat, or they don't want those together because it creates a lot of problems for them. But other than like couple things like that, they're like, yeah, you want to take a feat, go right ahead. I've never had anyone have a problem with taking a feat. And the stat increases from Tasha's, it's basically making it so you can play any race class combination, and you're not forced into kind of a cookie cutter box because this is the best race for that class. And I it was one of those things that I kind of like it, but at the same time, I'm like, okay. The last thing that I'm bringing up is it's called social interactions, and basically the idea of this whole thing is that if you make a rousing speech to someone, and even if you roll poorly, do they listen or not? And the whole idea behind this is they made this 3-part system of uh, people that are friendly to you, people that are indifferent to you, and people that are hostile to you. And what the basic idea is if someone's hostile to you, they're not going to do what you want at all ever. If someone's indifferent to you, if you make a very high charisma check or persuasion check, they might see it as, oh well, yeah, you know, yeah, I'll come along if you think it's a good idea. And if they're friendly to you, it basically can lower DCs, and they're much more amenable to, absolutely, I will fight with you. You can have my sword, have my shield.
So
And
basically, it's a stat that reflects your demeanor.
it's not a stat. That's the thing. It's more of like a table. It's like something that the NPCs have. If you've ever had like a game where you're playing it and you have to be nice to an NPC and eventually they're able to become a companion, it's that sort of idea. But the idea behind it is you can make, if you make a rousing speech and you turn a hostile creature to an indifferent creature because of the speech, no role associated. It's a DM discretion sort of thing. It may make whatever the role you make become easier because they're either indifferent or friendly to you now because of
I
your rousing speech.
I honestly think this kind of falls into like the same category as earlier with it kind of just is like can be all circumnavigated if the DM just kind of goes with the RP flow of the session rather than be rules as written. But if you need a rules as written, once again, this works. So they have put thought
Absolutely.
into this, and it's nice to see.
Yeah. But those are all. If I've missed some optional rules that you guys want to talk about, please point it out because I did a whole deep dive on this, and a lot of it's interesting, and a lot of it I think is entertaining, but I don't know how much I would. Some of this stuff I like, some of the stuff I'm like meh. So I'll ask you guys, what do you think your top three is of optional rules that I've listed here?
For me, it would 100% have to be hero points, honor, and gritty realism. Like, I think you throw those three together and you put it in like a violent, like, you're in a city dealing with mob bosses and like pet dragons, and make it difficult and make it to where you have to also socially interact in order to advance. Because if you only go in swinging your weapons, you're gonna die, and you're gonna die quick. I think that those three together would make for a very interesting and difficult campaign. Um, and each one alone, I think, could add to a campaign that I would enjoy playing in.
Okay. What about you, Kyle? What optional rules like are your top three?
Honestly, I would probably go with the proficiency dice as my first one. That actually seems like it's a lot of fun. Actually, might run that. Followed by the honor score. I really like that. And then weirdly, I would do the third one as the skill variant, but with that, like, just having the DM go with the flow kind of checks rather than stick to what you actually have to do. But I really like that.
Okay.
So, what would your three
Yeah.
be, Joe?
I'm a big fan of the proficiency dice first and foremost. I like the idea of um, making that proficiency bonus to have a little bit more variance and for it to potentially be a success. I also really like the gritty realism because it slows down the time frame because some of these adventures that you get into, even in the modules, it's like you go from level 1 to level 15 in a matter of like a couple months or less than half a year. And whenever you have the gritty realism, it really slows down the pacing. So suddenly it's taking 4 or 5 years in game for you to have that same sort of progression, and it allows the DM to have things moving in the background, and it also allows you to do things like one thing that I really like is I'm a big fan of like survival. It's like if you're out in the middle of nowhere and you guys have no weapons, limited materials, and you're trying to find a way to survive. It's really things. And one of my favorite like stories that I always heard is there was this group of adventurers that they were trying to escape a prison. They escaped the prison, and they're on this sled, and they start throwing the boxes on the sled back. I think it's one of Z Bradshaw's stories, but lo and behold, they didn't look what was in the boxes. It was the supplies that would have let them survive. Instead, they end up having to trek through the wilderness with almost no materials, no weapons, like, and the druid in the group is looking for a sprig of mistletoe because it creates good berries. And this whole thing that he kept trying to look for this sprig of mistletoe, and he made it a rule that basically whenever you get the sprig of mistletoe, you roll a dice to see how many you get instead of automatically getting, I think it's like 10 good berries. And because of that, it added to the gritty realism of it, other than, oh, our hunger issue is completely fixed. And that is really interesting to me because of the fact that you're able to go, oh yeah, we did that. That was great. Um, and for the third one, It's a real toss up between the hero points and the honor, because I like the idea of the hero points making it's kind of making your character succeed in those tough situations. But the honor system is just it's cool to see like your actions having consequences and your actions affecting one of your stats. So I really have to give it to honor, but it's a real close tie there.
So just really quick, there was one in here that I saw that we didn't talk about, and the only reason I'm going to bring it up because this would be in my mind, this would be a campaign where it's just you're out to destroy the world. Like, this is what I would want to see in an evil campaign. You're out there just wrecking stuff. Epic heroism. Variant uses short rest is 5 minutes, long rest is an hour. Like, you want to talk about just going absolutely bananas? Fireballs everywhere, all day, all night. Like, just blow up the world. I don't see how the campaign could actually work with this in it, but it would be one of those, it's a one shot, you got a giant maze that you got to go through, something along those lines, and you just run the epic heroism. You've got a 6 hour session and you have to complete it in that 6 hours. That's the only way that I could see this working, but it would be fun.
I'm gonna say the epic heroism is the opposite of gritty realism,
Mm-hmm.
because it's the, oh hey, we can cast all our spells, and hey, we're gonna get them right back in an hour, and you don't worry about spell slots, you don't worry about all the little stuff, you just go ham on all these whatever it is you're fighting, and I could see where that would be a fun one shot. In a long term campaign,
Not a long
I
term.
would treat myself.
Yep.
I would definitely
Yeah,
like.
this is kind of lightweight ridiculous. At
Yeah.
the end of a long rest, you restore half your spell slots rounded down. Like at the end of a long rest, which is an hour, or if you opposed to your 8 hour full rest that restores all your spell slots. So
Right,
it's pretty good.
right. So the last two things that we have to go on. Um, I've got a backstory, and then we have our encounter. Um, Backstory that I made this week was I tried to pick the most generic name I could think of,
And
and it ended up being Mark Baker.
it works.
And the the whole inspiration for this character, um, you guys seen the movie Office Space, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. The whole idea is this guy got office spaced by a wizard. Like the the hypnotist, rather than there being a hypnotist that tells you just to be happy and enjoy your life, and then that hypnotist keels over. This is a wizard casting a spell on him to make him fulfill his, whatever he wishes, or fulfill his happiness. And he his whole life was in a bit of a rut. He's running a restaurant. His wife is a bit of a nag, and next thing you know, his wife takes him to a wizard to try and get help for this depression he's in. And I'm very vaguely saying the wizard casts a spell on him with the command to live your life to the fullest. And it's at that point he figures, like, I'm not living a life here at all. He quits his job, leaves his wife, and becomes this adventurer without a second thought. And my whole thought process for this character is that he's got these quick hands, and he from chopping vegetables, from chopping meat, to doing all the prep work. He has these very quick. So it's I ended up making him a dexterity ranger, and the interesting thing about it is that I had a whole debate of, did I want him to have knives as his primary weapon, or did I want him to have something like scimitars? Because I immediately started going to like the Mongolian chefs with the swords and a shield, and I used the optional rules and Tasha's to give him create bonfire and uh I'm blanking out on the other cantrip that because Rangers don't normally get cantrips. Guidance, so that he's always able to do that and help him, make good food. And the other benefit from him is he also has the chef feat, which allows him to make special food during a long rest and or cooked treats during a long rest and special food during a short rest, which uh, gives an extra D8 to everybody on a short rest that eats his food, and the treats give temp HP on a long rest. So it's one of those things that he's helping buff the party. He's got this kind of weird sort of fighting style with like I said, I didn't know if I wanted to go knives or scimitars. I think I ultimately might end up doing scimitars, but it was one of those things that the whole idea was just interesting and it was kind of fun, and I love the idea of him being under a spell that is making him live his best life, and his best life is not being tied down or dragged down by his situation, and he just drops everything and says, "I'm going to become an adventurer."
I like it. Like this turned me on to the chef feat, which is kind of cool for like buffing. I like the idea of this guy realizing, hey, I'm really good with knives. I can go out there and kill monsters and then butcher them and sell the parts. Like I love that part in the backstory. That's pretty awesome. Um, everything about this backstory kind of hits for me. I'm digging either the knives or the scimitars. As soon as you said he was good with knives, I imagined him like with a broadsword or like just a giant sword cleaving ribs in half. Like that's and then you said the scimitar and I'm like that's perfect. Like just cutting halves like sides of beef with a giant sword is phenomenal.
See, that's funny because
One of the reasons,
when you said the knives, I went to daggers.
yeah,
And
and I kind of thought that it was like I'm honestly, if I were to flesh out this character and play him, I would have a big debate of if I wanted him to have daggers, because I'm picturing something along the lines of like a butcher knife versus like doing two swords and it being like a Mongolian barbecue.
that'd be interesting. See, while you were saying and talking about your backstory, in the chef feat, I one think the chef feat is kind of underrated. Like it's a really good feat. Couple it with the gritty realism from earlier. I don't know, like your backstory, I just kept applying the gritty realism example you gave earlier, and like I was just like, this backstory works really well.
Absolutely. And I know the next thing that we're talking about is the encounter of the week, and I made up the encounter, and you two both made an encounter for it. So the encounter I made was while trekking through a dungeon, the players enter a room with a pool of water, and I put 5 foot square. The door shuts behind them, and then I gave you guys the freedom from there. So Kyle, why don't you go first and explain your encounter.
Right, so the door shuts behind them, and the players see in the pool a shadowy figure rise up from the water, and they would I would make them roll some sort of check to see if they like are intimidated and or like what's their intention towards it. and kind of play it out like that. Ultimately, it's a hostile creature. It's a drowned maiden. These things are great for they're just really good balanced creatures, and you can gave it was level 8 party, right? Party
Yep.
of 4.
Yes, I did.
So like I put in this is going to be 2 of these creatures. But you have them completely distracted while the one comes up behind them, and one of their signature abilities is they can drag people under the water. And it just creates a oh crap, what is this moment in the party? And they can just do so much. So you let this go out and play out, and it's kind of honestly going to be a really hard encounter. After that, I would have another creature called the Malachi, like be imprisoned in like a chamber that the party would find upon defeating the drowned maidens. To the party's knowledge, they would not know that this is a very powerful entity, and it basically just it's that temptation. They're gonna be very exhausted from the fight to begin with. So it's like, do they push further or do they just let it go? Take their, cut their losses and let it go, or move on to the next room. So I like to give my um I like to give my players options, and I'm not afraid to hurt them and kill them. And they know that. So it's just like, how greedy are you? Like, I'll let you go as far as you want, but it's gonna hurt. So there's that kind of thing.
I
Eh,
like it. It's a challenging it's a challenging encounter for sure. And as I look at it, like some of the stuff with the drowned maid can really um especially if they come out of nowhere and it's just like they grab people. They're they have multi attack. They have uh the drowned kiss, and that, I mean, that's one of those ones where you're like, man, don't fail this DC, don't fail this or save, don't fail this save, and that can be brutal to a party.
It creates tension. It creates that
Absolutely,
absolute like I have to get this right. If I cannot mess this up. Like my party is
for
counting on
sure.
the situation, and I don't know. Isn't that what D&D is all about?
yep.
Yep.
See, and it's
Uh,
kind of funny because I almost went the same route, just with uh different enemies. So
all right.
it
What did you do, Thorn?
in my encounter, they walk in and they see this pool of water, and they can see kind of stuck down in the pool a set of armor. So someone is obviously going to reach in and try to grab the armor. As soon as they touch the water, uh 2 water weirds spring from the water, and the suit of armor rises to the top and is a water elemental myrmidon. The water weirds, while not super difficult, um, have a 10-foot range with one attack to constrict and attempt to pull and drown the characters. So we both kind of hit on that point. We want people to feel like they're they're in danger of drowning. Um, so the big thing in here is the myrmidon. You're gonna want to fight the myrmidon, but while you're fighting the myrmidon, who has oh, why did Beyond just mess up on me? Um, I believe they have a multi attack, which is 3 attacks. Uh, Yeah, 3 attacks with its trident. Um, and then it also has freezing strikes. So you're going to want to focus that, but you have these 2 weirds that are constantly trying to grab your party and drown them. Um, it's one of those things where, are you greedy enough to touch the water, or do you bypass it and leave the room? Because if you leave the room and don't touch the water, you don't even get the encounter. Most players are greedy, and they want to see what that armor is. And then obviously, if you complete the task, the reward would be some sort of armor set that you take from the Myrmidon. But I like the idea that we both thought about having a creature in there wanting to just drown our players.
That and we both preyed upon the temptation of greed.
Yep. That, like, without any idea of what we were gonna do, we came up with almost identical scenarios, just with different monsters, and I love it.
It's really funny.
Well, do you guys have anything else?
I think that's everything for me this week.
Yeah,
I'm
that's it
good.
for me.
All right, so we're gonna wrap up
All
the show.
right.
Thank you guys. This was a little bit of a long one. I dig it. Had a good time talking about the rules. If you're an audio listener, head over to
Rabbit
Twitch.
hole.
What's that? Oh yeah, rabbit hole.
Rabbit hole.
If you are an audio listener, head over to Twitch, twitch.tv/dragonheadspod. Hit that follow button. We'll give you a shout out on the show. Still working on iTunes. iTunes kind of a pain, but we are up on a bunch of different podcast apps, and I'll put the RSS feed directly in Twitter. I'll tweet that out. So people, if you're on Twitch and you want to check it out, or if you're on YouTube and you want to check it out in the audio and be able to listen at work, we'll have those RSS feeds up. You can find the show over on Twitter at DragonHeads2. Email the show, dragonheads216@gmail.com. And follow the show right here on Twitch at twitch.tv/dragonheadspot. We record live Monday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern. And our intro music is a self-induced psychosis by my buddy, Mr. Kyle Wynn. Thanks for joining us. Get out there and slay some dragons.
Hey, stay safe, adventurers.
Easy, man.